Everyone, just a quick video following up from my previous session. This one we're going to focus on cloud sandboxing, and in particular the quarantine feature. I've had a number of customers and users ask me about how to enable quarantine, particularly during proof of concepts for sandboxing. For those of you who aren't familiar, effectively the quarantine feature changes the default behavior so that it holds a file while it's being analyzed, rather than the default behavior, which is to send the file through to the end user and retrospectively determine if that file is indeed malware. So for this demo, I've got two machines. I've got a virtual Windows 7 host, which you can see here. It's fully patched. A Windows Defender is in play. I am going out via a Vodafone internet connection, as you can see here, hence by the IP address. I've got a malicious file that I've hosted in Google Drive, which we'll come to in a second. In the background, we have a Kali Linux attack service running Metasploit, and is listening on port 80 for a dial-in via HTTPS. So we just need to let's just go ahead and make sure that we're still listening, which is good. And what we've done with this Kali Linux distro is to create a malicious executable that is packed in a certain way to evade desktop AV, and in particular the Windows Defender client. So going back to Windows, one of the things we can do is we can, quite happily download the executable file, but for the purposes of demo, let's assume that we've already gone ahead and done that. So in our downloads folder, we've got the malicious executable, and we're going to go ahead and run that. And one of the things that you're going to see is the inbound call there from the Vodafone IP address to our Metasploit client, and I can indeed go and have a little dig around, so we can say who's dialed in and what, so I can interact with that, maybe take a screenshot of that host and see what they're doing at that particular time, maybe even drop into shell, have a little look around on that client. So you can see I'm inside the downloads directory there. So okay, let's drop out of that, because one of the things that we'll see there is if we go back onto the Windows 7 host, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that because we're going to test it again, is one of the things that we can see there's no security in play here at the moment. Windows Defender has done nothing, and indeed our Zscaler client that you can see here is not logged in. So what I want to now do, let's just make sure everything's still running. Okay, let's make sure there's any sessions. Good. Let's go ahead and run our exploit host again. One of the things I would like to do is to then log into the Zscaler service and show that file being downloaded through the service and how we react to that. So if I log into the client is tied into my IDP, in this case is Windows ADFS. I'm going to select the Zscaler Cloud. I'll let that log in. It's going to refer me over to the Windows IDP, and we're going to log in. Everything's happy, and what that's going to now do is build a tunnel between that client and the London Zscaler data center. That's set to minimize, so you can now see that in my taskbar. If I open that up, you can see that I'm now connected to the London data center on the ZS Cloud network. So that's all good, and we can then do some testing. So if we go back to our public IP address and hit refresh, so we've refreshed, and we can now see that our public IP address is now changed to a Zscaler source IP address, and we can do some other things like download the ICAR test virus. Again, this is just a sample malware file that's used to just trigger alerts and things like that across the majority of vendors. I'm going to use the HTTPS based one just to show that we are intercepting. So you can see the HTTPS ICAR is being picked up, so everything's happy. Next thing we're going to do then is we're going to go ahead and download that malicious file. So this is just a OneDrive login. Let's just refresh that to make sure everything's happy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and right mouse and download that file. A couple of things are going to happen. You notice there that Google Drive did its antivirus scan check and came up with nothing. That has gone through our Gateway AV the Zscaler platform. But because we don't understand what it is, it's sent it off to our sandboxing environment for analysis. So we've now got this page that says, come back in 10 minutes. If we deem the file to be safe, you will be allowed to download your content. So we've protected the user straight away from potentially harmful activity. So let's jump over to the portal and let's give that a quick refresh. So the first thing we should see is we have got files being sent to sandboxing and for viral content. So if we look at the viruses, this should be our iCar test virus that you could see that I downloaded previously. And likewise, we've got some activity on the sandboxing. So if we click on that, you should be able to see that we have some files, here we go, that were basically picked up and it's been quarantined. And that's been sent for analysis, and in fact it's come back and labelled it quite correctly as malware. So we have been prevented from accessing that particular file, and we have stopped that Metasploit attack. And then in terms of getting more information about what was inside that, we can then click on this MD5 value and open it up, and we get a report that clearly labels why we've determined this to be malware. In this example, so we've got, it was executable, we've got a 36 out of 100 in terms of our rating, and it's given us some good hints as to why we've decided that this may well be a particular bit of malware. And so what we've got is the ability to download the original file, any additional files that were downloaded during the attack, and then any packet captures that we picked up. And then we've got the summary of what was taking place during our execution. So hopefully you can see there that we've picked that up. So just a quick demo of the quarantine feature and the logging around that. So in the interface, we go to policies and we head on down to the sandbox tab. And in here you'll see the ability to create some rules. We've got a default rule. This default rule is in place to all the users, all the customers, and effectively allows us to scan for things like DLLs and executables from known suspect sites or content such as pornography and things like that. And then above that I've got a rule that's simply scanning everything. So if I open that up, and in here you can see, for example, that we've listed all our file types and said that we want to analyze all of those within a sandbox environment. But you can typically build up policies. So in a customer environment, I may select things like Adobe Flash and Java, for example, from certain URL categories to be exempt from the sandboxing behavior entirely, or to have quarantine turned on or not. And indeed, you can have certain users. So quite commonly it will be that you have a certain user who may be a director, so we can select this user here, and he will be quarantined, whereas a certain other user will not. And then what we can do is we can go down to the action we've got down here, and we can set that to quarantine and enable that, and that will simply turn on that quarantine feature that you see there. And we'll just go ahead and save that. And we are there. We've got our quarantine policy, and that's it. And thanks for watching.